Okay, we're going to be looking at translating Latin sentences this lesson. There are two parts to translating when you're first getting started. The first part is bracketing. So I always like to tell students that anytime you look at something that's a little bit difficult or a little bit hard, the best way to tackle it is to break it down into bite-sized pieces. There's an Indian proverb, India from Indians from India, not Native Americans. There's a an old proverb that says, "How do you or question, how do you eat an elephant?" And the answer is one bite at a time. So when you're looking at something that's it looks quite daunting or difficult, the best way to do it is to break it down into small pieces, and that's what we're going to do before we start translating. We're going to break it down into small pieces and then translate it once we have the pieces broken down and analyzed. So let's take a look at what bracketing looks like. Okay, here's a sentence. Now, the first thing you need to do, I always tell students, before you read it, slowly read it. Just slowly read it. Don't think anything, just read it. Just try to pronounce the words. Don't try to analyze anything, just read the sentence. You're going to read the sentence a couple of times, but the first time, you're just reading it straight through. So let's do that together. Secundas literas discipuli heri videbas et de verbis tum cogitabas. Okay, so once you've read it the first time, now we're going to read it a second time. But this time we're going to notice some things. And we're just going to, in our head, just kind of what jumps out at us. Always pick out the easiest things first. And we're going to go from left to right, from the beginning of the sentence to the end, and just see what do I notice about some of these words. So let's start it here. And this is going to be really slow. And as you get better at this will be much quicker. But right now, we're going to like slow it down into slow motion. So we're going to start reading it. Secundas literas. Well, the first thing I notice is that both of these words have an AS ending. I like AS endings because there's only one place we have AS endings in a noun. So if you remember, literi is actually a first declension noun. And the only place you have AS is in the accusative plural. I like that because that means there's only one possibility for this word. If it's accusative plural, it's got to be the direct object. Of course, the word secundas is also, it's an adjective, and it's because it's describing the noun literas, then it has to agree in case, number, and gender. That's why it's also accusative plural. And so it's an adjective modifying this direct object. I like that. All right, so we're going slow here. Secundas literas. Now we get to the word discipuli. There's a lot of possibilities here. Oh, before I do that, we're going to bracket these two words together. So secundas literas. So this is going to remind us that secundas and literas go together. All right. We're going to skip discipuli heri because there's some questions. Discipuli has a lot of possibilities. Heri, it's like, oh, I'm not sure about that one. We're going to go to the next word because automatically that ought to jump out us. That's our verb. And that BAS ending tells us specifically that it is imperfect, second person, singular. So now we've noticed something about that. That's our verb. It's second person and singular. We continue to read. Et, I'm not sure what that means. It's a vocab word. I'll have to think about it later. Oh, but de I recognize. De is a preposition, and we like prepositions. Matter of fact, we love prepositions because prepositions always have what? An object of a preposition. But let's look at this word that's following it. Verbis. Comes from verbum, verbi. It's a second declension neuter. And if you remember, is can either be dative plural or it can be ablative plural. So let's put that down here. We got two choices. It can either be an indirect object if it's dative, or it could be an object of a preposition if it's ablative. We're going to have to decide that here in just a second. We're going to go ahead and bracket these two together. All right, tum, ooh, that's a word I don't remember, so we're going to skip that right now. Cogitabas, again, that's a verb, and BAS, again, is an ending that tells us it's imperfect second person singular. So we actually have two verbs, which means we have a compound sentence. So let's continue. What's the next thing we're going to do? Well, now that we've read it through a second time and we've noticed some things, now we're going to go back and hit the words. Notice there's several words that we haven't written anything down. So we're going to go back and try to break these down. We just took a run at it initially. We got first impressions, things that were easy to pick up. And now we're going to start picking up the harder things. So let's look at discipuli. Well, it comes from discipula, discipuli. And if you remember, AE can be either genitive singular, which means it would be possessive. It can be AE, which would be indirect object, dative singular. Or it could be AE there is the nominative plural, which would mean it'd be the subject. So we have three choices here that we have to decide which one is it. Is it either the subject, is it an indirect object, or is it possessive? Well, let's just keep that in mind. We'll see if we can't break that down in a minute. We've got possibilities, but we're going to have to take it a next step further, discover it. Harry, if I don't know that word, it's a vocab word, I have to look it up, and I find out, hopefully I remember it, but if I don't, I look it up and I find it's an adverb. Well, adverbs basically modify verbs, so I'm going to go and bracket that with the verb with the boss, all right, because that goes together. Harry with the boss. All right, and we're going to continue on. Tomb is also an adverb. Again, if I don't remember that vocab word, I look it up and I find out it's an adverb. So again, because it's an adverb, it modifies or tells us something about the verb. We're going to go ahead and bracket tomb cogitabas. That leaves us just with the word et. And again, if I don't remember that vocab word, I look it up and I remember that it's a conjunction. And that makes sense because we have two verbs. It's a compound sentence, so we have an and that joins essentially two sentences together. All right, so what are we going to do here? We've got most of this deciphered, but we still have two questions. Discipuli has three options, and verbis has two options. Let's see if we can't narrow this down so we can get a way to translate this here. Before we do that, I went ahead and bracketed the first sentence in the compound sentence, secundas literas discipuli Harry with the boss, and then the second sentence in the compound sentence, de verbis tum cogitabas. So those are all together. So let's see if we can't break down discipuli a little bit better. First off, we need a subject. Let's do that first. We need a subject because we didn't see anything that's nominative. Well, discipuli could be nominative plural, so it could be our subject. But you know where there's a key to realize that that's not the case here? Is to look at your verb with the bas. It's imperfect, second person, singular. That letters BAS, the ending BAS tells us it's second person singular. And if the verb is you were seeing, right? BAS equals you, right? And so you is the subject. If the verb is I or you, first or second person, there can be no other subject in the sentence. That is the subject. So we know we can eliminate the first possibility for discipuli. It cannot be the subject. It cannot be nominative plural. So that's going to go away. That leaves us with indirect object or possessive. Which one is it? Well, what we have to do is remember how we translate indirect object. If you remember, it's to or for the student if it's indirect object dative. But if it's possessive, genitive, it's going to be of the student. So let's see which one sounds better. Right now we have Harry with the boss. Yesterday you were seeing, right? Yesterday you were seeing secundas literas, the second letter, to the student. You were seeing the letter to the student. You were seeing the letter for the student. Those don't sound right. What about if it's genitive, it's possessive? You were seeing the letter of the student. Yeah, I think that one makes more sense. That makes it more sense, so it obviously has to be genitive, so it's possessive. So we can get rid of the indirect object, the dative. It has to be genitive possessive, and therefore, if it's genitive, you remember possessive, it basically is acting as an adjective. It's also modifying. It's telling us whose letter this was. Secundas literas discipuli. All right, the second letter of the student. All right, what else do we have left here? Oh, we have to deal with de verbis here. Well, let's see here. I think that deleted for some reason. Oh, all of these are deleting. All right. Yeah, they should have done it automatically. They're all doing it one at a time. So 1 second while we delete all of this. I don't think I actually deleted the indirect object here. Hold on, let's get rid of all these. All right. One more. And we actually can get rid of the indirect object for dative, for the word de verbis. And the reason why we can get rid of that one is because you've got this preposition in front of it. If you remember, ablative is basically your case of by, with, or from. It has to do with prepositions. So the fact that verbis has a preposition in front of it means it is definitely not dative. It's not the indirect object. So now we have all of our pieces in place. Look how we have this broken down. Secundas literas goes together. Secundas literas discipuli goes together. Heri vidibas goes together. And then all of that, secundas literas discipuli, heri vidibas, that all goes together. We've got an and that's going to join this to the rest. You've got de verbis that goes together. You've got tum cogitibus that goes together. And then de verbis, tum cogitibus all goes together for the second part of the compound sentence. So let's see if we can't break this down. Let's go back to secundas literas. Well, secunda is an adjective. It simply means second. Now, literas comes from the word that means letter. Now, I do want to point out something special here. You may be noticing that we are translating this word letter, but it says that it's accusative plural. So why isn't this letters? This is one of those unique words that in the plural, it means it's translated as singular, because it doesn't mean a letter as in like a letter of the alphabet, which is what it means in the singular. In the plural, this means like a letter, which is a bunch of letters put together. It's a letter. So we translate this as singular, a letter, or in this case, the letter, the second letter. Discipuli, we said, was genitive, so we're going to say of the student, genitive singular. Adverb heri, that means yesterday. Vidibas, we said it was imperfect second person singular from the verb vidao, which means to see. So it's you were seeing. Et is our conjugation. It means and. De verbis, de can mean about or from or out from. Verbis is an ablative plural. It's from the word verbum, which means word. So this is about the words. Tum is our adverb then. And cogitibus is our imperfect second person singular from the verb cogito, which means think, to think. So this is you were thinking. So let's put this together in bite-sized pieces. All right? Let's check this out here. Heri vidibas, that goes together. Yesterday you were seeing. What were you seeing? Direct object. You were seeing the second letter of the student, discipuli, the second letter of the student. And tum cogitibus, then you were thinking de verbis, about the words. There's your sentence. Yesterday you were seeing about the second letter of the student, and then you were thinking about the words. So initially that sentence may have looked really hard to translate, but all of those letters, those endings that you've been learning, they mean something. And so if you can just take the time to analyze each word, break it down into its parts, and then connect words that go together, like prepositions go with objects of the preposition, adjectives go with nouns that they modify. If it's genitive, then it's going to be modifying a noun. So these are the ways that you break it down, analyze it, and you come up with the translation. I want you to look at the worksheet and do the next several sentences exactly the way this has been done and see how you do on your translation. You'll have an answer key to check your answers.